Hello and welcome to the sixth VuFind tutorial video in which I am going to talk about how VuFind uses the OAI-PMH protocol to both share and receive records. So OAI-PMH is the Open Archives Initiative protocol for metadata harvesting and is a well-supported and widely used method of sharing XML metadata between systems. It supports not just harvesting entire collections of metadata, but also doing incremental harvests, so you can get only things that have changed since your prior harvest, and it can also address deleted records, so you can find out what has been removed from an upstream system. The protocol always supports Dublin core metadata, but it also can support any kind of XML format as long as the server and client are both able to deal with the same standard. So first of all, I'm going to show you how you can turn on VuFind's OAI-PMH server. So I'm going to the command line and I'm going to edit my local config.ini file. And you'll see that in the default configuration that comes with VuFind, the entire OAI section is commented out. So by deleting this semicolon and uncommenting the section header, I have now activated my OAI-PMH server. That's all I need to do to turn on the basic functionality. But there are a few things here that I would probably also want to do, like give the repository a name. And you can set a separate administrative email for your OAI server, or otherwise it will default to the overall email address configured for your site. There are also some settings related to sets. Since OAI servers can divide a collection into specific sets, you can use a Solr field, like a facet, for defining sets, or you can specify particular named sets with particular queries associated with them if you want to allow people to harvest specific subsets of your collection. But if you just leave all this stuff commented out, then set functionality will be disabled and people will only be able to harvest your entire collection. There is another important step, though, that you have to take before you can use OAI-PMH server capabilities in VuFind, and that is to turn on record change tracking. Because the OAI-PMH protocol needs to know the history of when everything in your system was created or changed so that it can do incremental updates, VuFind needs to track more information at index time so that the server has the information that it needs. By default, VuFind does not track record change information because doing so makes the index process slower. But if you do turn this on, you not only get the benefit of being able to use the OAI-PMH server, but you also gain access to some other functionality that otherwise won't work, including RSS feeds that are sorted based on actual record creation times, and the ability to use Solr-based new record searching, where you can actually limit your search by how recently records were added to the index. So to turn this on, you just need to uncomment a couple of lines in the default mark local properties file. So I'm going to bring that up, and this is the same file that we've worked on in some past videos. And you can see here near the top there are two lines, first indexed and last indexed. And just by uncommenting these, I turn on change tracking going forward. The difference between these two fields is that the first indexed field will contain the date of the first time a particular record ID was indexed into the system. And the last indexed date will contain the most recent time that record changed. So when you index a record for the first time, first indexed and last indexed will be set to the same point in time. But if that record gets revised over time, last indexed will change to reflect those changes, but first indexed will always stay the same so you know the age of the overall record as well as the date of its most recent change. And this is sort of the minimum amount of information needed to implement OAI-PMH. Of course, simply making a change to my mark local properties file is not enough. I also have to re-index all of my records. And just in keeping with past demos, I'm going to index 3 of the sample mark record files that come with VuFind. Journals.mark. Geo.mark. And authority.bibs.mark. And of course, I've showed you how to turn on change tracking for mark records. At some point in the future, we'll also talk about importing XML. And when we get that far, you can also turn on change tracking there. It's just done in a different way. But for now, we've got our index updated the way we need it to be. We have the OAI server functionality turned on in config.ini. So I'm going to switch over to a web browser and show you how this works. So if you go to your VuFind URL with /OAI on the end of it, you will get to a convenient page that shows you all of the verbs supported by the OAI-PMH protocol and lets you test them out on your instance. So for example, the most simple thing you can do is just say identify, which will dump out basic information about the server. And as you can see, that Damien's repo repository name I put into config.ini comes through here. Of course, much more interesting is finding out what kind of metadata formats are supported by an OAI-PMH server. As I mentioned before, they always support Dublin core, but different formats may be supported by different servers. So in VuFind's case, I'm just going to put in the ID of one of the records in the index and find out what formats are supported. So here is the OAI-DC, which is Dublin core, but you'll also see there's a Mark 21 format supported. So Mark XML can be dumped out of this system as well. And if we wanted to actually see some records, we can use the list records verb, which at a bare minimum requires that we give it a metadata format. So I'm going to give it Mark 21, hit go. And there's my response. And as you can see, there's some Mark XML getting dumped out here. So by turning on this functionality, you can share all of the records in your VuFind index with other systems. This can be useful for building union catalogs, participating in projects like the Digital Public Library of America, and also actually indexing things into VuFind. So now that we've showed how OAI-PMH server functionality works, let's show what VuFind can do as an OAI-PMH client and actually make it harvest itself as an example. So going back to the command line, there is a folder we haven't looked at yet called harvest in the VuFind directory. And like just about everything in VuFind, you can override things from the harvest directory inside the local harvest directory. So one of the important files under harvest is called OAI.ini, which is just an ini file that you can use to set up OAI harvesting. So I'm going to copy harvest/OAI.ini into local harvest. So I make a local copy that I can configure inside my local settings directory. And then I'm going to edit. So OAI.ini has lots of comments at the top showing the many, many settings that are supported by this file. And you can read through those at your convenience. But at a bare minimum, all you need to do to perform an OAI harvest is to create a section name. We'll call this VuFind because we are harvesting our own VuFind. And the main purpose of the section name is that records that are harvested will be saved in a directory whose name matches the section under your local harvest directory. So when I perform a harvest, I will end up with a local/harvest/VuFind directory filled with XML files. Now I need to give it the base URL of an OAI server. In this case, that's going to be http localhost VuFind/OAI/server. This is the URL that you would share with others who want to harvest from you, though of course in a real life scenario, the host name would be something other than localhost. And I also have to provide a metadata prefix telling it what metadata format to harvest. And in this example, I actually just want to see what the Dublin is. So I'm going to say OAI-DC, save this file. Once you have your OAI.ini set up, there's a PHP script called harvest/harvest-oai.php. And when you run that, it will loop through OAI.ini and harvest every section it finds, or you can tell it the name of a specific section and it will harvest from only that one repository. So I'll do that. I'll tell it harvest VuFind. And now there we go. It just downloaded 250 Dublin core records in just a couple of seconds. So now if I go into my local harvest VuFind directory and list my files, I have lots and lots of XML files. And if I cat one of those out, there it is, a little bit of Dublin core with a title and a creator and an identifier. So that's really all I wanted to show this month. This will become much more interesting when we talk about ingesting XML because you can harvest with OAI and then load a whole directory of records into VuFind. We will look at that next time. In the meantime, I also just wanted to quickly mention that if you want to do this OAI-PMH harvesting without having to install all of VuFind, it has actually been split out into a separate project called VuFind Harvest. So you can just check out VuFind Harvest and run a simplified version of the script without having to carry the whole weight of VuFind around with you. And I will include a link to that project in the notes with the video. That's all for now. Thank you, and I will provide more information next month.